You ready, Shirley? Are you ready? Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the. I think we're.
No. It just shows
it. Will the guilty person please stand up?
Yes. Turns out my mute button doesn't work, guys. I'm so sorry. So it's. Okay.
All right, excuse us. We have some technical difficulties and we'll. All right, are we? All right, sounds like we're there. Let's try this again. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Rapid City Area Schools Board of Education meeting. Shirley, may we have a roll call, please?
Troy Carr.
Here.
Jamie Clapham.
Here.
Christine Stephenson.
Here.
Deb Baker.
Here.
Kate Thomas.
Here.
Michael Berkwin.
Here.
Walt Swan. Jace Jandrew, our student rep from Central, is absent with notice, and Samuel Blickensdorfer. I knew I was going to get that. I am so sorry, Samuel.
Right, at this time, our invocation will be led by Pastor Brock.
Shall we pray? Father, we just start by asking for blessing on every school board member, every administrator, every parent, every teacher, every community member in this room, Lord. I thank you for them. We all care. And we pray, God, for your wisdom and your direction, Lord, upon each every decision that is made, Lord. We believe we get exactly what we ask for in prayer. And we're asking, God, for your will to be done in Rapid City tonight for our kids, just as it is in heaven. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I'd like to ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God,
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the proposed agenda. All right, in part of our discussion, I need to make a motion to add item 7A, which is our student representative. It was unfortunately left out of that. So that motion is to add that to the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you for that. And vote on the approval. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Next, Superintendent Swaggart with the sharing the success.
Thank you, President Carr. Couple of wonderful things are going on in the district. As always, we can't possibly share all the successes we have. But one piece of great success that I would like to share with you is that the South Dakota State Library and the Department of Education, the division of the Department of Education, formally recognizes the schools, libraries of West Middle School and Rapid Valley Elementary. Librarian Shelley Rath from West with Dan Conrad, and librarian Jennifer Bacchus with Principal Cher Daniel. I don't think, is anybody here tonight? Yes, come on. So this school library award was last week at the library conference here in town, which was fantastic. The school library certificate was awarded to the librarian at the South Dakota Library Association conference. Did you want to say anything about the award or?
No, it's a great evaluation of how well I'm doing with my library program and how I can support my whole school community, students, teachers, parents. And I just love being a part of it when it comes around. It is my 5th time getting it, but it keeps me on my toes and I enjoy doing it.
So I think it's important that we recognize the fantastic things that our library media specialists do in our district, how they do support all of our students, they support all of our educators, they support administration. So many great things are happening in our libraries. And I know that there's been a lot of controversy and a lot of heat in the last few years, but we are doing great things. And for the state of South Dakota, the State of South Dakota Library and the Department of Ed to recognize two of our libraries in our district, when there was not only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in the whole state, and we had 2 of them. So it's a big deal. So I wanted to celebrate that. Did you want a picture?
Superintendent Swaggart.
Yes.
Mrs. Stephenson like to make a comment about that. I would too, actually. So
Please.
I just wanted to thank you, Mrs. Rath. The library is my daughter's favorite spot. You've made it wonderful. And the book club, Mrs. Rath does a book club where people can once a month, they go down during lunch and twice a month. That shows how much I'm thinking. And she's just always reading, thanks to you. And she loves the book club and she just loves feeling welcome and safe in your space. So I really appreciate it and wanted to say that publicly so you all know that.
I just wanted to say thank you too for the hard work. Again, we've had some trying times with library issues, but thank you. And in my touring of schools, I was really surprised. I thought with all the technology that kids would be not wanting books, would want to be on a tablet, but I'm learning that kids still want that feel of a book. So thank you for all you do. Appreciate you.
Thank you, board and President Carr and Christine Stephenson for recognizing that. It is a big deal. Also, it is not on the agenda, but I am going to take the liberty of saying thank you to the board. Before the board meeting tonight, all of the schools participated and sent our board members thank you cards and gifts. it's important that we recognize and thank you as well. And you do not get enough of that. So thank you. And thank to all our schools for taking the time to have students write messages to our board members. I hope you have a fun time reading that. I got a thank you today, unexpected in the mail, and they told me I was very pretty. So that was, that was nice. It was from a class. They said I was very pretty. The other thing that I would like to just celebrate tonight is night one of student representation on our board. As you all know, I think that my daughter served in this role a few years ago. I think it is a fantastic opportunity for the board to learn from firsthand from a student what's happening in the high schools. So tonight we have, for the first night, Samuel Blickensderfer. He is joining us from Stevens High School. We had a short visit. He is active in Bike Club, which is fantastic because I didn't even know it existed. It sounded really fun. They go on bike rides a couple of times a week, a month, a week. He is taking 4 classes and 3 dual enrollment classes, and his classes are all AP. So I think he is a very busy young man. So I'm very thankful he has time to join us. I have shared with him that these reports are very important to the board and they might ask him questions after he gives his report. So he knows that. And I've also given him the liberty to make them his own because we love seeing personalities come out. So I would like to welcome Samuel Blickensderfer. He is here representing Stevens. And at the next meeting, we will introduce the central one. He is a little busy playing regional soccer tonight.
All right,
Thank
thank you, Superintendent Scriber. On to persons wishing to address the school board. We have 5 tonight, and so you will have 5 minutes. Before we begin, just let me read the guidelines so that we're all on the same page. Issues that affect an individual or particular school should be first addressed at the school level. Speakers should speak clearly and concisely and stay focused on their main points. Speakers must refrain from making complaints about personnel, either naming the employee directly or identifying them indirectly. Complaints regarding district policy should be filed in accordance with District Code KL Public Complaints. Speakers must respectfully communicate. Speakers must refrain from making threats, using vulgar language, intimidating or harassing the board or members of the district. With that being said, at first, I'd like to call up Mr. Big Crow. No. Yes, yes. Yes. No, no.
All right, now, I want to say thank you, all of you, for letting me come up here and talk a little bit of my concern, a little bit of my thing. You know, I work with the word philosophy all the time, knowledge and reality, that all the time. You know, the reason why I come here is every year when the school starts, I ask Miss Gorman, Horseman Elementary, can you please get it right for my girls? I have a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. We walk to school every
Excuse
day,
me, Mr. Big Crow.
snow, rain, blizzard. We need a ride to school.
I'm sorry, but one of the guidelines that I just mentioned is about not mentioning personal.
Oh, I'm
names.
sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
that's
I
okay.
apologize. I got
Okay, all
I
right, I
got a little
understand.
bit of hearing. So
All right,
you have to
I'll speak.
holler at me.
Oh.
You know, the Jesuits beat me up, you know, the Jesuits and the nuns, and back in 1968, 67, in a St. Francis Mission School. I was beat up by the Jesuits and the nuns.
All right, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I had to mention that. Because of the rules. So continue. You may continue.
Yes, anyway, that's what I came up with. Every year I ask for a ride for my girls. You know, every year I lose a toe. I can show you right now. I wanted my doctor to bring me a statement. I have 10 toes. We lived here for 10 years now. We're going on 10 years. I got my little pinky toe left right now. Diabetes got me because I walk every day in the rain and snow with my girls. And I ask for a ride from everybody every day. Give my girls a ride. Give my girls a ride. They're angels. They are angels. They need rides, you know. If God didn't want them to be walking, he would have took them to heaven's gate already. But today, I feel, lost because I can't find a ride for my girls. If we have no love for child, if we have no love for kids, show me that. We talk about, we love our kids, we love our grandkids, we love this, we love that. We walk every day. It's like end of a trail for us every time we get to horseman school. Because we don't know if we're gonna come back or not, because somebody down the road is gonna kidnap us. Somebody down the road is gonna kill us. Yesterday, on the news, I seen this little girl. She went around the block, asked Dad if she can go one more time. She went. Dad waited 10, 15 minutes. All he found was a bike. He didn't find his daughter. That girl we're missing for the last 2, 3 years up there in the canyon. I don't know her name. That little girl walked off of her home. It's getting scary. It's getting scary, Chairman. We need a ride. We need a ride. I'm begging you. I'll get on my knees right now and beg you for a ride. I don't care what color we are. I don't play that discrimination. I don't play that. Because God is the main person that we always look after. Gosh, And if we're gonna keep that together, I always say this every year to the school, horseman school, let's help each other. But we're not. My girls are still walking. No matter, it don't matter how close you live to the school. It don't matter how close you live to the school, because you can get shot going out your door. You can get stolen right out your door. We always say it's our parents' responsibility. Yes, we understand. But elderly like me, 6-year-old, 8-year-old, we need help. We're begging you guys for help. I never knew this was going on. Never knew nothing about this. Last time I seen a school board was back in 1967. That was the last time. There was some nuns, fathers that sat in there with straps, with belts, whips, want to beat us because we couldn't wear our long hair.
Mr. Big Crow, that's
Yes.
time. Thank you so much for
Thank you
coming.
very much, but I need your help.
All right.
Thank you.
Next up, I've been looking at this name for the past 10 minutes. So, Mrs. Kuipers?
That was close. That
Oh.
was pretty good. It's Dutch. It's Kuipers. That was pretty good.
Man, see, I was wondering whether it was 3 or 2.
You
All
didn't
right.
Go there. Sarah was fine.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, very close.
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking up here. I'm pretty loud, so no worries. First off, I just want to say thanks for everybody. And I know that you guys do so much for the schools. And I want to say thank you because I did email Jamie and he emailed me back and it was just a timing thing more than anything else. The school board meeting was just now. So what I wanted to chat about, and I'm sure you guys are well aware because everybody's kind of been on everybody's mind lately, is just the busing situation. One of the big things, so we're right now in our 2 weeks of busing blackout. And everybody who's in the district who has kids that are bused, they have experienced this fabulousness. So where, we basically, they say, well, you don't have a bus for the next 2 weeks, so good luck. And I know that the busing shortage has been really more of a staffing issue than anything else. And it's been really difficult. And the district has done, what it can to hire new bus drivers. And one of the biggest things that I think we're running into is that, my son started over at Corral Drive in 21, and busing has been an issue since then, and probably before then, but obviously that's the first time I got exposed to it. And so in the last several years, the busing situation has only gotten worse. And so despite the fact that everyone's trying to hire people and get things moving, I feel like we're in a situation where we need to maybe look at alternative options and solutions beyond just busing blackouts. You know, it creates an issue where parents, you know, the Corral Drive folks are wonderful. They can, you know, they've said, hey, you know, if you need to drop your kids off a little bit early, they can sit in the office until it's time to go in the playground. I mean, they've been great about drop off. The biggest issue on my end of things, and for a lot of parents that work, is pickup. So it's hard to take off and get your kids at 2:45. And especially when it's such a long period of time. If it were a couple of days, you know, I could maybe ask a neighbor, I could ask, you know, grandparents. But when it's that extended of a period of time, that's a pretty big inconvenience for someone. And so then for myself or for my husband to take time off in order to pick up the kids and get them home, that's 22 and a half hours in a 2-week period where I'm not working and I should be. 22 and a half hours in 80 hours, you know, if you're looking at a 40-hour work week, which is a pretty significant ask of a parent, especially when we are supposed to have a level of transportation. Now, I get that everyone's doing what they can to try and look at that situation, but what I'm hoping is that, you know, all the folks that are sitting here and a lot of other people that are really trying to come up with alternative options versus these busing blackouts. And I mean, everybody's getting affected in about the same way. You know, one of my big issues, my son came home yesterday, which is part of the reason why I got a little bit more passionate about this, because, you know, we were dealing with it. It happens. But he came home and he's in 2nd grade and he told me, he said, Mom, half my class was just running around the playground because nobody knew what was going on. They didn't know if they were getting on buses. They didn't know who was picking them up. They didn't know if it was grandma or grandpa or mom or dad, or if mom and dad couldn't come, was it somebody from their office? Was it a neighbor? It's not safe because the kids don't know who's picking them up. And things happen last minute. Parents get stuck at work when they're supposed to be able to come. And then they have to, you know, call somebody and they have to say, hey, I can't get my kid. Can you do it? So now these kids don't know who's getting them. So he told me, he said, half the kids are running around the playground. They don't know where they're at, what they're doing. The kids were sitting up on the hill when the buses came in, and you know, it's not the teacher's responsibility to monitor all of these children as to where they're going, because the teachers don't know, because it changes on a daily basis. It's just, you know, you're going to have a kid that wanders into somebody's car that they don't know who's coming to get them because of this situation. And so, you know, that to me was my 7-year-old saying, are you coming to get me today? Is grandma coming? You know, is Chuck coming? Like, who's coming today? And not knowing the answer to that question is a little bit difficult. And so just because of the length of time this has been going on, I'm really looking at what are some of the other options that we can look at to try and solve this situation, even if it's for a short period of time until we can get some people hired. You know, just some things that I was thinking about, you know, that there's a code in the school policies that says that we actually should be giving people mileage allowance if we are not able to provide transportation for these students. It's SDCL 13-30-3. We should be paying people to transport their own children if we cannot provide that transportation to help try and account for that. Now, obviously, there may be some other rules that I don't know about that does not apply.
And I'm so sorry, Ms. Kuipers,
Please.
that's the,
Okay,
all right.
Thank you.
For coming. This time I'd like to call Mr. Butcher. Vincent?
Hello, I'm very grateful for the ability to speak to you. And I'm an exchange student from Poland, and I came here for the year. And my problem is that during this year, before I even started the education, I got a very clear information that I cannot graduate here, even though I'm a senior. what's a problem for me is that I don't necessarily know why that is. Every time I try to get more information about that, I get sent back to the policy, which is, like I looked it up, it's 20 years old. I accepted the fact that education from Poland might not be enough to receive a diploma here. However, when I offered the opportunity that I'm ready to do the tests in terms of your education to complete the subjects that are needed to graduate here, I got also rejected because of the policy. The policy rejects any kind of possibility of graduation for me here. And that would be probably my issue, because I also addressed this problem with my school counselor, but every single time, as I said, it's not even justified in any other way than the way the policy is stated, that was agreed upon 20 years ago. So that's my problem. And thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. This time I'd like to call Mr. Stanfield.
Hi, good evening. So my name is Joe Stanfield, and I'm a parent here at RCAS, and I'm the host parent for Vincent. And I'd just like to speak a little bit more about that, and I appreciate your time and allowing me to speak. So many foreign exchange students come here every year, and they're limited to a ceremonial graduation as opposed to graduating with a high school diploma. The exchange students that I've run into and that I've been able to meet, and that Vincent's been able to meet since we've been here, are very grateful for the opportunity to be here and to be able to study. These students often come to the RCAS having met or exceeded the current graduation requirements in their host country and the requirements that are here. They do bring a lot of valuable perspective and allow Rapid City students to have a taste of a foreign culture and often inspire other students to study abroad. These students, even when submitting transcripts demonstrating that they have met or exceeded the graduation requirements, are not allowed to graduate. And they end up spending an extra 1 to 2 years back in their home country in high school. I ask that you reflect on this policy and why it exists. What is the function of this policy, and how does it benefit the RCAS? Should you choose to amend this policy, you'll have a direct positive impact on current exchange students. And often these foreign exchange students wish to continue their education here in the States. A high school diploma versus a GED obviously opens up more opportunities for these students to contribute to our community and perhaps the great state of South Dakota and our country. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to call up Mr. Sherman.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today and have the opportunity to speak to you all. I came to my first board meeting the last time, it was 2 weeks ago, and to see what it was all about. And I was surprised that there was a prayer invocation at a government school board, which is a government entity with no religious affiliation. This is concerning to me because it has the potential to leave people feeling excluded, other religions, Jewish, Muslim, Wiccan, atheists, and it's also concerning because it could open up the school to potential litigation as there are clauses in the South Dakota Constitution 6.3. This is an excerpt. No person shall be compelled to attend or support any ministry or place of worship against his consent, nor shall any preference be given by law to any religious establishment or mode of worship. No money or property of the state shall be given or appropriated for the benefit of any sectarian or religious society or institution. I appreciate religion and but I strongly believe in the precepts of our Constitution, that there should be a clear distinction between separation between church and state. I would like to suggest just it'd be more appropriate to have a moment of silence or a public disclaimer every time that the school board is not affiliated or supporting whoever is doing religious education. That is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, board response to open forum. There's a statement in the agenda that says individual board members' response does not represent the opinion of the entire board. I'll take hands.
Sorry.
That sounded like that. That made me sound powerful, didn't it? All right, at this time, I recognize Mrs. Clapham.
As always, thank you to everybody who gives up their evening to come to a board meeting. I know we all have about 1,000,001 other things we could be doing, so I appreciate you all for being here. I will say, without going into detail, transportation is something we talk about like every day. Almost every meeting we're in, we recognize the significant situation, the crisis we're in. It is a very challenging and complex thing. There are policies at state level versus our district level that actually may, I won't say contradict each other, but you could see one way and one the other. So we really are discussing all kinds of creative solutions, and we do hear you. We recognize when we do make changes that coordinating 23 buildings gets really complicated when those transportation changes. They're not saying we don't do hard things. We can do hard things, but it will take some time. But I appreciate the concern. I understand the concern. It's a challenge as a parent. I was on my 2-week bus cancellation last week, so I understand that wholeheartedly. As far as the policy, I appreciate this year I have the opportunity to be on the policy committee, and of course we have, I don't know how thick the book was when they pulled it out, but it's like 1.5 feet thick book of policies. So people bringing forward policies that directly affect you and are older is beneficial and helpful to us. So I appreciate that being brought forward. And as a policy committee, those policies that are brought forward and are old and need to be reviewed will rise to the top of priority. As you know, 20 years is a long time for a policy not to be reviewed. So I appreciate bringing that forward, and I appreciate all of you coming as well. And that's what I got.
All right, thank you. Chair recognizes Mr. Berkland.
Thank you. So we've been in contact. I'm the one you've been emailing. Hi, nice to meet you. And I just wanted to reiterate kind of like what Ms. Clapham said here, and what I had mentioned in the email is I am very willing to look at policy. I agree that a 20-year-old policy does warrant a second look. But I also just wanted to mention, kind of like she mentioned with the busing thing, there are the state laws that kind of do hold us back. And unfortunately, we don't have quite as much power there. I'm not sure right off the top of my head, and we'll have to look at them, what we can do in our policy and what the state law requires of us. Like, I don't know how those line up exactly, but I do, like she said, I really do appreciate you coming here and bringing those things to our attention, because they do kind of move it up the priority ladder. And it's hard to come talk in front of people. So especially as a high school student, I want to commend you for that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Berkland. The chair recognizes Mrs. Thomas.
I would say as well, thank you for coming. It is very tough, especially for students, to come up and talk in front of all these adults making decisions for and parents too. It's tough, especially for first timers. So I applaud you as well. Like you said, I was going to mention policies sometimes are based on law, and if the law hasn't changed, then and if we don't have the money to go ahead of and do better than the law, there isn't much we can do. I think for a couple of the different situations that have had, or that you've brought forward tonight, I know that Superintendent Nicole Schweigert has already made a note to that she is probably going to be talking to you or having someone reach out to all of those that are that have brought some serious issues. I'm not sure that the busing can be done overnight. That's just, it's tough. That is tough. I do want to mention that the statement of separation of church and state is not actually in the Constitution. The invocation has been vetted. There have been people that have reached out to try to talk about a suit, but that isn't possible. And I don't know if you guys have been to the Rapid City City Council. They also do invocation, and I absolutely want any Muslim, Jewish, atheist, whatever, to come forward and call Shirley and ask for to do the invocation. It's more of a blessing of a type of thing. So I can only say publicly, please reach out. And you know, the policy does not limit anybody from asking to do that. We just have not gotten calls from them. So hopefully they do hear this and reach out. So that's it.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Mrs. Swagger.
Thank you, Bishop Carr. As for the student from Poland, I do want you to know that I have asked Central High School to get a translated transcript to determine if the courses you have on your transcript would meet our 22 credit requirement. And if the classes you have and the classes you are taking meet that 22 credit exact, I mean, the crux here is they have to match our 22 credits required. So what our policy says, if those meet, we can have a conversation. That I have asked the registrar at Central High School to make that request and do that work. So I did want to point out that when that came to my attention, I did ask for work to be done. However, that doesn't guarantee there'll be a change, because we do have to make sure at that point I could bring something forward to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Swagger. Chair recognizes Mrs. Stephenson.
I appreciate everybody else's response to the open comment. I just wanted to talk to Mr. Big Crow. Can you hear me? Mr. Big Crow? Can you hear me? I want to thank you for walking your daughters to school every year and for putting your trust in our district. It sounds like you had a bad experience with schools, and it means a lot that you trust us enough with your daughters. I hope that we can get you help getting them to school. I don't know how, but I appreciate that you came and advocated for them. If you can hear me. I thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Well, I do. So, and actually quite interesting. I'm passionate about three of these subjects. I made a comment about the busing and the busing schedule, that when I say we're doing everything that we can to hire, to look at other companies who have drivers, to hire different drivers, just everything humanly possible. And so the last time this issue came up, I made a pitch then, and I will make a pitch again to the community that we need your help. This is an issue that is not going to be able to be solved within the district. We need the community. We need people who are able to drive, who want to drive. We'll accommodate schedules. If you want to drive in the morning, we'll do anything. And so that's my comment, is that I'm asking the community to help us help you, because praise be to God, my kids are gone, but I empathize, and I drove, not dead, they're out of the house, they're not. I drove my kids just because of safe reasons. They live 2 blocks from the school, but I drove them, all 4 of them, every day to school. So I empathize with you two, people that still have kids that still have to do that. And so I know it's difficult and I know it's hard. And that is why, again, we are trying everything that we can to do that. And so again, I'm asking the community for your help. It's Mr. Oh, I'm so sorry. Mr. Butcher, I just came back from Italy this year because my wife wanted an exchange student. And so we got an exchange student in Italy. It wasn't good enough that he came here, but she wanted to go and meet the parents and all of that. So we went over there and that was a big issue, a question that the parents had, that they wanted him to graduate from the school. So I'm absolutely aware of your issue and your concern. And when I asked the question, I think the main concern, not only with the state laws, but that all students, no matter foreign or domestic students, are all treated the same, to make sure that when the board certifies that a student has graduated from high school, that everybody has met the similar requirements. And why that's important is when a person wants to apply to secondary education in the state, they would also like to know that everybody that has a certified diploma has met the same requirements and certain requirements. And so my hope maybe after this is that we're better able to communicate to foreign students who maybe ahead of time think they want to graduate from high school here in the States, and that we can communicate that requirement so that they don't come all the way, because like our student, we didn't know. So it wasn't until he came here and we figured out what was going on, that in his case, he was only a junior. So we found out that he couldn't graduate. But I think it would have been important for him and his family to know that information beforehand. So again, Ms. Swaggart is looking into the situation, but I just wanted to let you know that I had personal feelings of foreign students that come and want to graduate. And again, thank you for coming. The other thing I would just say briefly, the invocation policy, and if people will read the policy, it says that anybody, a student, a parent, you don't have to be religious to come and do an invocation. And as Mrs. Thomas said, it's basically a blessing of goodwill for the board as we do this difficult job. And so actually, I talked to Shirley just tonight, and she has gotten 2 calls, and we already have speakers for the first meeting in November and the first meeting in December. And so there are 2 more spots, the second meeting in November, the second meeting in December. If you want to sign up, you give Shirley a call, and it's first come, first serve. So once those spots are filled, they'll be filled. So did you want to communicate anything different or add anything to that? Okay. Any other board members? All right. Thank you very much for your patience. At this time, we're going to 7A, and that's our student representative from Stevens report.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to all who were able to attend in person tonight, and along with any online viewers. My name is Samuel Blickensterfer, and I'm ecstatic to be here tonight. This is my first official board meeting, and I am representing Stevens High School, and I'm excited to work with all of you this year. Stevens has been off to a fabulous start this first quarter, and it is my pleasure to share with you some of our ongoing works. Firstly, on the academic side of things, Stevens has 3 National Merit Scholarship finalists. Out of the 16,000 around the US, Hunter Davis, Luther Bushing, and Samuel Barnes are still in the running. Alongside the National Merit Program, Stevens High School is also very active in several other national programs, of which includes the National Honor Society. Eligible juniors have already finished applying and are now waiting for acceptance letters. The inauguration will be held on November 7th at 7 p.m. in the Stevens Gymnasium. Extracurricular activities have also been a prominent position at Stevens High School this year in the past few years. Because of this, our amazing principal, Ms. Hafner, and activities director, Mr. Karn, have established the first ever student leadership advisory meeting. Our first meeting was 3 weeks ago on Wednesday, September 13th. This council has been created to provide students with an area of involvement and to help the vision at Stevens High School evolve. During this meeting, many topics were discussed, including FBLA's school-wide volunteer program, possible intramural sport programs, and the student council's role in homecoming, which leads to my next point. And homecoming is the largest week in Stevens High School besides finals week. So this week-long event is going to be held next week from October 10th through the 14th. The themes start on Tuesday after our break on Monday. And the following themes include Country versus Country Club, Blue Out, Class Color, and finally on Friday, Barbie and Ken. A trophy has also been designated for homecoming to encourage students to participate within their class. Participation will be comprised of students signing in at desks throughout the school to rack up points for their class. At the homecoming dance, there will be additional games and competitions, so students can get individual points to help boost up their class overall rank. And as the fun as the weekdays are, the pinnacle of homecoming is the homecoming dance, which will be on Saturday, October 14th in the Stevens Gymnasium. Now, athletics, the Raiders, as far as athletics go, the Raiders boys and girls soccer team have advanced to the first round of playoffs. The girls faced off at Lincoln versus Lincoln tonight at 3 p.m. I'm not sure what the results were. And the boys are currently battling it out with Brandon Valley. I'm not quite sure when that game will end, but it's probably around in an hour or half an hour or so. But our soccer teams have been performing incredibly well this year, and the sport analytics have unequivocally reflected their outstanding achievements. The girls have won 9 games and have lost 2, and the boys have won 8 and only lost 3. Stevens has also implemented an Athlete of the Week program, which can be found on any of the Raiders social media pages. This was created to help young athletes get the recognition for their hard work and dedication. And lastly, Raider Park has undergone some major renovations in the past 2 weeks. Buffalo Berry Trail is a new trail at Raider Park. And it aims to invite people from around the community to be positively affected by Stevens High School. So while we may not have a traditional playground or sandbox like many elementary schools have, we do have a beautiful park that the surrounding community can be involved in, and it has been a blessing so far. And that is it for this week's report, and I thank you all for listening to me, and I look forward to the upcoming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blickensderfer. I appreciate that. You did a good job. And we always like the little rivalry between Central and Stevens. So we're looking forward to that. Thank you. At this time, we'll have Superintendent Swiger's report.
Thank you, President Carr. I do have a note that we're all supposed to speak closer to our mics tonight. People at home are having a hard time hearing us.
Okay.
So, I gave you all my update tonight so that you can take notes on it if you have any questions, and then I will take questions at the end. I always do have one of these. It didn't occur to me that you might want a copy, but now you have one, and Shirley is going to add it to the postings every week. Strategic planning update. I did promise that I would start giving an update on a pillar every week. This week, I'm going to update on 2 pillars. Number 1 is the community pillar, and I am the pillar champion for that pillar. I believe that to better community relations, we need to be out in the community more and giving presentations and taking questions and really just being a presence to advocate for Rapid City area schools and let people know what's going on. So in the last few weeks, most of these happened last week or are happening tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm presenting, or last week I presented to the Rotary Club that met at noon, and tomorrow I'm presenting to the realtors. So the realtors it's not really a club, I don't know, organization, association tomorrow morning at the monument. I have started to have a monthly meeting with Rapid City PD and Pennington County Sheriff's Office. I recorded for the 100-year school project a message that is going to be going out. I attended the Elevate Rapid City Board meeting, the Monument Board meeting, and last Friday I attended the Elected Leaders Luncheon. And the whole district leadership team attended and worked for the United Way Day of Caring. At all of these events, we are able to advocate for Rapid City area schools. If I'm asked to present, I take a presentation. I always take questions at the end. Many times organizations haven't heard recently about what's going on in the district. They ask really great questions and are excited to hear. So that is some of the community pillar work that is going on. I also do want to give an update on the staff pillar. We did hold the line dancing event at Rapid City Central High School, and we had about 70 people show up, and we had a lot of fun. It was super hot, and I believe we created a new exercise program called Hot Line Dancing, and it's going to compete with the Hot Yoga Studio in town. It was so much fun. Bobby got a lot of great pictures. And people that evening asked when we could do it again, which I took as a very good sign that it was a hit. On October 20th, we are having our first annual, I hope, Rapid City Area Schools Cornhole Tournament at Stevens High School. It starts at 5:30. We hope to conclude around 7:30. I have ordered trophies. Winning teams in the amateur category and the I'm pretty close to pro category. We'll get trophies. So I'm super excited about that. And we have sent out the sign up. One person has to be connected to Rapid City area schools, but I guess everybody can find a ringer for their partner. I have heard that Miss Baker would like Miss Thomas to be her partner. I've heard that, and I have heard some other board members may be attending, so I'm super excited about that. That is the strategic pillar update. Activities are in full swing, as Samuel talked about. Soccer regionals are happening today. In addition, Central's teams are both in soccer regionals as well. So it's a pretty exciting time. Ms. Baker has a personal interest in state tennis. She's heading to that. It is in Sioux Falls this weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday. Okay, Thursday, Friday, state tennis. I think golf finished last week. I know they were turning in their stuff. It's a super short season. I think fall golf is actually more fortunate often than spring golf, because spring golf is often snowy. My daughter played spring golf. That's when the girls golf. Cross country, we are getting ready to wrap up that season and head off to state. Volleyball and football have a little bit longer. Football for us always culminates with the Cobbler Raider football game, which is the Thursday after Stevens homecoming. So it's Thursday, October 19th will be the Cobbler Raider game. It is a lot of fun. I did have a chance to educate Bishop Carr about the tuba race today. So he needs to come and check out the tuba race at the Cobbler game. Cobbler Raider football game. I had a student voice forum. It is one of my favorite activities that I do as superintendent. Last Friday night, Thursday night, I met with 5 student reps. I'd like to grow that committee. So I have volunteered to travel to Stevens High School, Rapid City Alternative Academy, Central High School, and the middle schools to talk to students and try to get them involved in that student committee. I really want them to be involved in that student pillar. In addition to us talking about what we have expectations for students, I think that they are our biggest commodity and we need to listen to what they want to do in that pillar. Excited about that. I've also been trying to do 3 or 4 school visits a week. I feel challenged by our board members. They can't beat me on school visits, so I got to get out there. I did attend the Young Readers Festival The Young Readers Festival is a Black Hills event, but we send all of our third grade students to listen to an author or meet an illustrator. And this year it was at the Monument, and it was Kate DiCamillo and the Tale of Devereaux. And what a fantastic book. She is an incredible person. It was fantastic to see that happen. And that she had two events, so 2 times that she met with students, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. All of our third graders did get transported to the Monument to get to hear her. They could bring their books, some got autographs, some took their books to school, I hear, and it didn't make it on the bus to go to the presentation. That happened with somebody in the TLI office. Athletic conference discussion, as I told you at the last board meeting, I had met with regional superintendents and there was some conversation about creating a side-by-side conference, the Black Hills Conference, that Rapid City areas schools could participate in. It would be made up of Sturgis, Spearfish, Douglas, St. Thomas More, and Rapid City Christian. They are all part of the Black Hills Conference. We have left that in their hands. They need to decide if that's the conference they want to do, and they need to bring a proposal to us. And if that comes forward, I will bring it to you. We did make an interim Valley View principal determination, and Mr. Burke started last Friday. He is a multi-year employee in the district and at Valley View Elementary. He is going to serve as interim principal for the remainder of this school year. We are excited to have him. He does at this point, he tells me, plans to retire, but that will give us time to post in a timely manner to get quality candidates to apply for that principal job. For the directors, I always like to share what they're doing. Special ed continues to have various needs for employees. We have lots of referrals happening for behavior room placements, and staffing is at a premium for those rooms. We are looking at expanding our RTI and services and really looking at that at the secondary levels. So I will be asking Dr. Hafer to report on that work. 504, one of the things we talked about in our last meeting was the budgetary needs. It is not an official umbrella piece of the special education budget. So budgetary needs for the 504 programs. And then English language learners, we have 36 brand new students so far this year. That program is growing. I wanted to share with you that we have currently have 24 different languages represented in those ELL students. And so that with that growing program, we are going to look at needs for budgetary allocations for that program, hopefully to include staffing. I know that when Dr. Hafer reported last year, we have created programs where we pull and instead of trying to spread out our ELL services thin across 23 buildings, there are times every week where we pull all of the students together to certain elementary locations. We pull them together so that we can concentrate our services in the work that they actually need done. And it has been very successful in that program. That pulling together of all ELL students is working very well. So it's 2 sites in elementary, I believe, and 1 at the high school at Central. TLI and the CCR department under Valerie Seals, they have continued to host their Leadership Academy cohort meetings. That is the work at Growing Leaders. So that is work that TLI and Dr. Strasser's working together to help grow our principals professionally. That is very valuable time that they get to spend in their cohorts becoming better leaders. We have we had an academy planning meeting that's under the college and career readiness work. Obviously, we made pathways. We pulled in the pathways. We concentrated that program into a more sustainable model last year. And so it's really important that we are continuing those discussions and that work this year moving forward. And we had our first instructional council meeting. Those are very important meetings that happen monthly, where any decisions made to add or take away classes or to adopt curriculum, that is where it happens before it comes to the board. So that is very important work so that we don't waste time. When we get to the board, we have dialed it down to where it needs to be. And information and technology, we have the digital educators presenting soon to the district direction leaders. We had three digital educators that go out and support digital education needs at all of our buildings. And I asked them to come and present to DDL, and hopefully I can convince them then to come and present to the board as well, because that's very important work. Shane, Daniel, and I also are talking about copiers and faxes and all of that exciting stuff that comes out of the capital outlay budget with Mr. Sassy. We meet a couple of times a month to talk about IT needs. Federal programs. This week we had a meeting to talk about methodology. Methodology is kind of a really fancy word to talk about at what point, how many students does a building have to get more staff? How many students do we have to have at a building to hire an assistant principal? How many students needs to be at a building to hire a dean? What are the soft cap sizes for buildings? At what point do we add counselors? All of those discussions, and that methodology is really important because federal programming has to be very concerned about supplanting services. So services that are paid out of the general fund cannot be paid out of title funds as well for a title building if it's being paid out of general fund for another building. So that methodology is extremely important. So we revisit it often, and we had a great discussion about that. And then, of course, all the title plans, as you're going to see tonight, and I think it's important that you recognize this, there is a piece in the consent agenda about overage in the title plans, and we are over the 15% cap of carryover. And it's super important to recognize that the reason we are over is because title plans include staffing. And last year, that staffing was not amended when we couldn't hire staff. That plan was not amended to take that money and do something else with it. So we carried over too much. This year, we are very much on top of that. We have a very solid plan going forward. I'm really excited about the work that Jennifer Strong is doing. One of the things that she is allowing principals to do with their title plan is if they need to make an amendment and they have justification and reason for that amendment, they can come to her and make that amendment more often. And this is really important in this day and age with staffing concerns. Because if you leave a staffing position open all of first semester because you hope somebody's going to move to town and fill that need, we want that. We want a person if we can get them. But if we don't fill it and we don't amend the plan second semester, that money just languishes there. And we have to be better about that because you can only miss the mark on your 15% carryover one time every 4 years. And then they start reducing your title money. So we have a very solid plan going forward. Mr. Sassy and I have been involved in that discussion. HR has been holding the PLMC meetings with all the various groups, which is the pre-work to negotiations where groups can come in and get concerns addressed now prior to negotiations so that hopefully the negotiations go much smoother. Additionally, HR, Mr. Sassy and Kelsey Parker have been holding pre-negotiation planning meetings so that for the first time ever, I think that we are really recognizing the work that needs to be done early before negotiations start so that those go smoother. And so I give them a whole bunch of shout out and kudos because I just see the hard work that they're doing in all of those meetings to get us ready. So for our negotiation season, which seems like a while away because it's February, March, and April, but got to do the work now to be prepared for those meetings. Safety, as you know, we hired a school safety manager. We meet weekly, if not daily, about concerns. We have had some secure your room calls at some of our buildings. Mr. Matt Sargent is able to liaison with law enforcement to go to those sites to help communicate with the district better about what's happening, why these are needed. In both instances lately, they have been secure your rooms, which is very different than a lockdown. Secure your room is almost always when a situation is happening around the school somewhere, in a neighborhood nearby, something is happening, and we just want to make sure that our kids are secure and going about business as normal. They can move inside the building to the various rooms. They can still go to PE. Teaching is happening. Lockdowns are very different. Lockdown is something is happening on campus. We are incredibly concerned. People need to lock their rooms. Education really needs to stop, and we need to be prepared to evacuate or move or do whatever. So it's been fantastic to have Mr. Sargent on that work. I will tell you that he is forewarning me about some requests he's going to have coming forward, which is going to take a long conversation with COI, because of course there's money involved there. As you know, we did apply for a grant. That grant, I have been told that there is an award package noted in the grant system, but the award notice has not been sent yet. And I think it goes to COI, and he's supposed to be carefully monitoring his mailboxes and his spam folder so that we don't miss it. But I've been told by somebody in the know that there is an award package attached to our grant. So that means we got something. Super excited about that. And then finally, legal. As you know, I really absolutely don't know what we possibly did before we had Ms. Barker on staff. We are going to be talking in detail about this situation called a burn tower. I think all of you are aware that years ago, Rapid City Area School Board also oversaw and acted as the board for Western Dakota Technical College. They had separate accounts, they had separate funds, it was a separate mechanism, they had separate meetings. The school board met sometimes to deal with WDT stuff and sometimes to deal with Rapid City Area School stuff. Something that happened before we divided in 2021, we separated. Something happened before then that involves a burn tower at Western Dakota Vo-Tech. And we have been approached by the city for a financial ask from that situation. And I will tell you now that it is the Rapid City Area School District's opinion that that is a WDT issue because the accounts and everything were separate. And I think it's important for you to recognize that if you have friends on the city council or things like that are coming forward, that it's super important that Western Dakota Vo-Tech is Western Dakota Vo-Tech and we're Rapid City Area School, but it is holding up some other needs and discussions that we are having with the city. And so we want to make sure that we are keeping you updated on that. I do meet every month with Rapid City Education Association. So I had that meeting yesterday. It's always important. They get questions answered about things. The sub pay seems to be a reoccurring conversation that happens. Leave is always a big deal, negotiations and those types of things. I appreciate that time with them. Tomorrow I'm meeting with the Joint Ventures Regional Superintendents meeting. So hopefully I'll hear some more about that side by side sports conference. A reminder that Sunday, October 8th. October 8th on Sunday at 2 o'clock is the Rapid City High School 100-year birthday. Super excited about that. They laid down the timeline. It is fantastic. The timeline talks about when Rapid City Area Schools were established, which is crazy because it was Rapid City Area Schools were established before the state of South Dakota was established. So please come on Sunday at 2 o'clock and have cake and celebrate and look at the timeline and talk to the people. I will be there. And I'm excited about that. And just a few things that I want to kind of add at the very end. Remember the powwow is this weekend. Get out Rapid City and support that. We do have an early release on Friday. it is Youth Day, so hopefully youth who are out in the afternoon can go attend the powwow. Next week, October 10th, is a very important study session. We are talking enrollment, we are talking boundaries, and we are talking facilities. It's going to be riveting and very important discussion. And the next regular board meeting, I have to be in Chamberlain for a superintendent's meeting, so I'm going to hand off my report that night to Mr. Sassy and Dr. Strasser. So just FYI, thank you.
All right, thank you, Superintendent Swigert, for that extensive report. Appreciate all the hard work that you do. Any questions, any board member questions? I will recognize hands. This time the chair recognizes Mrs. Stephenson.
Thanks for that report. In addition to the powwow this weekend, there is the Remember the Children Memorial Walk. And I've gone to that many times. I've gone as a board member and a community member. I just would like to encourage my fellow board members, if you get a chance, it's very meaningful, but also it's relevant to us because we would like to educate these kids. We'd like to do a better job. And the importance of being there, I think it's meaningful to people to see board members. So
When is
10
that?
o'clock at, it starts at the Flower, at Sioux Park.
The Flower Gardens at Sioux
Flower
Park.
Garden at Sioux Park. You'll see.
When?
And you can come just for the
Sundial.
sundial. Yeah. Yeah, 10 a.m. on Monday. So, and then I just had a question for you, Superintendent Swigert, about sub pay. I was reading something about how teacher retention, because you know I'm always reading about that, is related to the resources available to teachers and the support that teachers have. So the lack of subs is a huge thing. And I don't know, as I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about, we have staffing positions we can't fill, we have holdover dollars. Is there a way to temporarily do a bonus pay for this year? Because it's weighing so heavily on our teachers.
So the carryover money is federal, and the rules for federal money are so very specific. So.
Yeah. No, I just brought
yeah,
that up because there are
Yeah.
other positions we haven't
There are.
filled. We have other funds.
There are, and one of the things we did, and you were not on the board last year, but one of the things that we did when teachers have to step up and cover for other teachers being gone, they were being asked to do that and expected to do that without any additional pay. So last year we did create a method for teachers who are covering for other teachers when they're gone to recoup some of that sub pay, equal to what a sub would be paid. So if an elementary class teacher is gone and those kids are divided out between 3 classrooms for the day, like 3 other second grade classrooms, each of those teachers get $50 additional for the $150 we would have paid a sub. If a high school teacher covers a class period, they are paid by the hourly rate for covering. It is not ideal. And it does require our staff when they are gone to enter the leave appropriately and to attempt to get a sub. But I will say, we continue to have a significant issue finding subs. There was a day last week that we had 27 unfilled sub positions in this district. As Mr. Carr, Bishop Carr made a very eloquent plea for people to bus drive, I will echo that with a plea for people to sub. People can sub half day sections. The first half of the day is 7:30 to 11:30 or 7:45 to 11:45. And the second half of the day is 11:30 to 3:30 or 7:45 to 3:45. We will take that. Half days are some of our worst things to get filled. If somebody gets sick, has to leave during the day, trying to get someone to come in for the second half of the day, it's very difficult. And if you sign up to sub, they call you and they do let you decline. Like when I subbed 35 years ago, they called you on the phone and guilted you like you were talking to a person. It was very hard to say no. Now it's an automated dialer and you can just hit decline. I think it's a lot easier these days. Maybe we're gonna have to go back to the old way. But subbing continues to be an issue across the nation, just like bus driving.
I guess what I'm wondering is like, could we say could we incentivize the subs we have? If you take 30 hours of subbing in a pay period, you get a $200 bonus. Or if you take 5 days in a month, you get this amount of bonus.
We do have we already have levels where after so many days they get bumped up, long-term subs, but I will certainly
maybe
bring that
I-
up to,
I don't know, it's such
Yeah.
a big deal.
It is a
And
big
if the
deal.
sub pool is there, it'd be a lot harder to say no if you know that that saying yes 2 more times means that you get an extra $200 or something like that.
good idea. Thank you.
Hey, any more questions for? All right,
Bishop Carr,
yes.
Mr. Blickensderfer has a question. I don't know if he,
Blinkenstofer, next time, just on your,
Bottom?
somebody will show you how to raise your hand and I'll recognize you. There you go. There it
Yes,
is.
I think I got it.
The chair
Yes.
recognizes Mr. Blinkenstofer.
Thank you. I had a quick question regarding substitute teachers. I was approached like 2 weeks ago. We have a substitute teacher at Stevens. She works in the science wing and she was asking me, she told me, would you be interested in subbing? And and I was like, yeah, that would be really cool. Cause my first portion of my day, I have classes, then after lunch, it's all free. But she went and looked deeper into it and she said that you have to have a high school diploma. There might be a more subbing issue requirements like in the elementary sense, but as far as high school, would it be a possibility to set like a program up for like 18-year-olds within the school? Because even like a senior subbing a 9th, 10th grade class could potentially they might not know anybody. So the class might just see them as an adult. So I don't know if there's state regulations on that, but something like I and a lot of other kids might be interested in, but just as a side note.
That would be for Mrs. Superintendent Swagger.
I will look into it.
Well, all right. Any other?
I think that elementary would probably love to have a
Yeah.
18-year-old sub for the afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of options. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions on the superintendent report? All right, I will apologize. I realized what happened when Superintendent Swigert talked about people not hearing. When I was talking to the exchange student, I was over here away from my mic, so I apologize for that. All right, seeing no conflicts of interest, we're on to item 10. Any board member would like to pull any item? Anybody? None. Okay. Yes, ma'am. I'm waiting for you.
A.
Okay, Alpha. All right, any other? And seeing no other hands, I'll entertain a motion to approve the proposed agenda except for item Alpha.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right, I'll entertain a motion for item Alpha, 2023 Title I carryover.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Discussion.
I have a discussion.
Yes.
So in the exhibit A, the carryover signature, it says, there's just a typo that I feel like should be corrected. RCIS Title I schools will be utilins. So I think they were saying we'll be utilizing excess carrier or will utilize excess carrier. And I just was hoping that you could correct that before. I mean, I'll sign it now. I'll vote yes on it now. I just want to make sure it gets corrected.
Okay, who's gonna make that? Help me out. Do we need to make a motion to change? Is this a correction?
It doesn't require board signature, it just requires mine. So I will make that change. And it's actually a Department of Education document, so. Yeah, so we did not write that. Okay, maybe in the part that we added, I will make sure it gets fixed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just just to be technical, I think we won't do it now, but I will rephrase the motion as to approving item A with the corrections suggested. Right, because it's not, we're not approving the original, we're approving the corrections made. Which next time we'll take the motion to make the correction. All right, any other discussion? All in. Oh, thank you. The chair recognizes Mr. Swan.
Thank you, President Carr. Just a question, and I talked to Christine just a little bit earlier, and I said, I didn't know if I wanted to question this or not, but I wanted to ask a few questions on the Title I carryover. The Title I carryover is meant for some of our neediest students and some of our most students, I guess, that need academic help, or are in the situation where they need academic help. My question, not having and starting my term here just lately, what happened? I mean, I'm just wondering, because we sit here and we talk about, we've had discussion before at this board about who is responsible for what and who's responsible to the board for this. What happened? I mean, that's it. I get it. I understand the whole piece, but you use part of it for the salaries for the carryover for the start of the next year. I get that part, but we've carried over too much now. You know what I mean? And was it too late of an action? Was it not was it in inaction? Was it not enough education? Just so that I'm clear, because most of the schools in North Rapid are Title I schools, and I don't want to not have an answer for them.
So thank you, Walt, for bringing that up. What happened was we had two elementary buildings that had significant staff unfilled that they kept posted all year. So $280,000 was allocated for wages for employees that we never hired. So that pushed us over, that extra funding there pushed us over the 15% cap. And you're 100% right. It is very typical to carry over 15% in your federal Title I dollars, because you have to pay wages in July and August. And sometimes it's September, or even forgive them, but sometimes they don't even get you the federal grants allocated until October. And you've made commitments to these people. They have told you that you qualify, but as far as them, and I mean them, the State Department of Ed, sometimes the money coming out is a little bit later. So that 15% is absolutely common to carry that over so that you can take care of the early fiscal year title expenses. It is not acceptable that in addition to that 15%, we were over that by over $280,000. And it was wages that had been allocated for positions that were not amended. And that will not happen again. But that is the reason.
Kind of a follow-up question, that what are we doing to ensure that doesn't happen again? Just to, it's just one of those things where I'm just, I get it. I worked with Title I schools before. I've made a career in Title I schools. I would really like to just know, I mean, it's not a question of, Walt Swan grilling the administration. It's a question of, these are identified students that do need these services that I'd like to see answered. I mean, it's not just me. Our designation says Title I. We should be answering to that, answering to those students with the most need in terms of funding, I guess.
And please know that I am not okay with $280,000 not being spent on kids in need. Jen Strong and I have had significant conversation about this. Past practice in recent years has been to amend title plans twice a year. Once in the fall. So the plans are written in the summer. Amendments were allowed once in the fall by previous leaders and once in the spring. That is not a state practice. That was a district practice. I have given permission, as has Coy, that when principals notice something is not working out the way they had it in their plan, they meet with Jen and bring that amendment forward, and we will amend as necessary throughout the course of the year. So for instance, if someone, this is not happening, but if, for instance, someone had planned for STEAM work to come into the district and somehow people said, well, we're not available, we can't come in. So there was $50,000 allocated for STEAM work to come in, or professional development that didn't work out, or maybe something that they planned on buying and then they decided not to buy it. Previously, once in the fall, they could amend, and once in the spring. Now, if they find, as soon as they find that out, that PD is not available, they schedule a meeting with Jen Strong. They rework that, they bring that amendment to Coy and I, and we approve it, and it can go in as an amended plan that comes to the board, but we'll allow that to happen. I understand the idea behind limiting the number of amendments because it is extra work. However, because of that, we found ourselves in this situation and it's not okay. Would you have anything else to add, Coy?
I think that was a great response and I don't want to be redundant. I think, yeah, some great questions, Mr. Swan. As Nicole points out, I think as we became aware of this information, part of the conversation really goes back to the initial stages of planning for those programs and exactly what that money is going to do. And oftentimes, in my experience across multiple districts that both had heavy federal funding, most times the folks that are planning that money, the principals and Mrs. Strong often will move that towards personnel, additional personnel in buildings to support the instructional environment, which totally makes sense. However, given the situation, not only in our district, but across the nation in terms of being able to hire effectively, that really becomes a liability at some point, especially in a year where if you're not filling those positions in the first quarter of the year, there needs to be a discussion, there needs to be an amendment, and there needs to be a new plan on how to spend the money, because it's unlikely you're going to fill the positions and that leaves a great big chunk of funds in there like we're seeing now that end up going unspent. Luckily, we were within the period in which we could exceed the 15% carryover, but I really think Director Strong and Nicole and I have had these conversations. I think she's got a good handle on it, but it largely goes back into the early preliminary planning of those grants and how that money is going to be spent and being realistic about the plans that are going to be in place, because it'd be great to have 5 or 6 additional teachers or paraprofessionals or any of those things. But ultimately, if we can't fill the positions, then we have to have another effective backup plan in place. And so I think Director Strong has a good handle on that, really understands the idea. And so I think there will certainly be changes to the planning process of that, which is really, in my opinion, Mr. Swan, how we ultimately deal with that is better planning on the front end, which will lead to better execution of the grant.
One last, and I'll shut up, I promise. Does this need, and I've spoken with both of you about, both of you and the board, I guess, the rest of the board, about, that we needed to create systems that would outlast you and outlast, everybody else that with that, when we create systems that make sense and do well for children, do well for our students, that we seem to do better. Does this need a policy or does this need any it's just concerning, you know, I mean, when you talk about students in need and you're looking at carryover and you're looking at things, I get that, you know what I mean? And I understand where this comes from. But does it need a policy or do you guys need something from the board to help with that? Because I just would like to see a better district and a better system for us in regards to Title I money.
Thank you, Mr. Swan. I know that Jen Strong will be presenting at a study session, and I think those would be really good questions to ask her. But I believe she is putting systems in place, and I believe she will bring those systems to you and talk about that. I am very hesitant, and I think Kelsey would echo this, is sometimes policies actually do more damage than help, because policies can really box you into something very, very specific with no wiggle room. And I would much rather us work on procedure. How is our system? How is our procedure? And take note from thoughts that the board has to better serve our underprivileged youth with those funds. Jen and I have talked in great detail. And I believe she has some really fantastic ideas for systems. So I will try to get her study session scheduled sooner rather than later so that you can hear those.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right. Any other discussion about item alpha? All right, I'll repeat the motion. We have a motion to approve the 2023 Title I carryover with the correction suggested by Mrs. Stephenson. Any other discussion? All right, we'll call for the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. On to item 11, and just a note, it is not a slight to Mr. Sassy that he's item 11 is just miscommunication, but he will also we moved the superintendent report up earlier in the meeting, and so his comments will also be moved up. And at this time, the chair recognizes Mr. Sassy.
Thank you, President Carr. I appreciate that. Did not take it as a slight in any way. So I did assure you, however, that I would get through this conversation in 15 minutes or less. So I'm starting my timer right now. And here we go. I will share my screen and rearrange it so I can see. Primarily, board, what I would like to talk through tonight is the fiscal year 2023 financial review. Primarily want to go through a really brief review of the end of year fiscal year 23 figures, and then a very brief review of some of the key annual report information. So the Department of Education requires that school districts submit what they call an annual report at the end of the fiscal year. And I just want to run through a few of those pieces of information with you. So looking at the 2023 fiscal year from the big picture, we had total revenue budgeted of just over 240 million. We received about 200.7 million for a total percentage received of budget at about 83.6%. Comparing that to the expenditure side, we budgeted 236.5 million in expenditures. We spent about 189.4 million for a total percentage spend of about 80%. Now, that is quite misleading, because to look at those figures, it would appear our budgeting was very inaccurate. However, I assure you there are perfectly reasonable things that happened that led to those issues, which I will start walking you through right now. So taking a look at the first of our major funds, the general fund expenditures in the year fiscal year 23. We budgeted 105.2 million in the general fund. We spent about 94.7 of that. Now, that would represent about a 90% total percentage spent with about a $10.5 million unexpended balance. We talked a lot about the idea that there is a lot happening in the general fund. And oftentimes we have to dig a little bit to get to the really accurate information of truly what happened in the general fund. And primarily in the general fund, that is because of the presence of the federal grant money. So from an accounting standpoint, all of our federal grant money, I should say that differently, the majority of our federal grant money is lumped into the general fund. So what we really want to do is pull that money away to get a good idea of what true general fund expenditures are and what really happened in the general fund. So you see in that next bullet point, when we pull that back and we look at true general fund expenditures, we budgeted 90 million and we spent about 86.2. So we spent about 95.9% of true budgeted general fund expenditures. So we had about a $3.7 million unexpended balance, which as a percentage of the total general fund expenditures is obviously less than 3%. A few areas of note within that information. So first of all, instruction. On the elementary side, we were almost 100% in terms of our total elementary budgeted expenditures being spent. On the middle school side, we were actually slightly over at about 101.6%. And on the senior high side, 100%. So overall, on the instruction side, we spent 100% of the money that we had budgeted for instruction. Where we see this unexpended amount coming in is really on the support service side. So on the support service side, we overall spent 93% of the budgeted expenditures. We were about 2.4 million under budget. And a couple of areas that we highlight from there, one being custodial. We came in drastically under on the custodial side at about 71%, which represented about 1.8 of that $2.4 million underspend. Also, we had 1.5 million budgeted in contingency. We used 0 of that because we were so far under expenditure. So really between those two categories, that is where we see that unexpended balance in the general fund. So overall, really in terms of true general fund expenditures, we were fairly accurate, coming in at about 96%. And this is a graphical breakdown of what those expenditures look like. So instructional expenses making up 55% of total expenditures, support services 41%, and then co-curricular activities about 3.5%. On the revenue side, we budgeted 104.8 million in revenue. We received 98.6 for a percentage received of 94%, under by 6.7 million. Again, we got to pull all that information back and look at what's happening in terms of true general fund revenues. So we budgeted 89.5 million. We received 90 million. So we received about 100.1% of total budgeted revenues, or about $500,000 over collected. Some areas of note, property tax, the current half of property tax, which is the most recent property tax, was about 121% of what we had estimated. We were 4.2 million over. However, on the flip side, the prior half property tax, we were well under what we anticipated at 92%, or 1.6 million under. Also on the state aid side, it came in quite a lot under where we had estimated due to decline in enrollment. Came in at about 93%, or about 3 million under where we estimated in terms of state aid. In good news, we used $0 in terms of capital outlay flexibility that we had scheduled. So didn't have to draw anything over from capital outlay, which is always a win. Here's what the graphical breakdown looks like in terms of general fund revenue. Really the major thing to point out here, and we've talked about this trend several times, board, is this continually growing share in terms of local effort. You'll see local effort at nearly 50% in as a makeup of the total general fund revenue. The state side at about 41%. If we went back in history, we would typically see that as a much more even breakdown of that 40 to 42% range between those two categories. Not going to jump down the rabbit hole or I'll spend way more than my 15 minutes, but our district's unique situation in terms of property tax revenue, in terms of the state aid formula, and how those factors impact are really what are leading to that greater and greater share of local burden on our local taxpayers. So I wanted to point out that that trend continuing here, even at a more prominent pace than what we saw last year. Switching over to the capital outlay side, this is really where a lot of that initial offage gets explained. So on the expenditure side, we budgeted 77.1 million. We spent 46.2 million again. This is atypical in capital outlay because rarely do we have the presence of federal revenue in capital outlay. We do, as of right now, due to the ESSER funds budgeted for South Middle School construction projects. So when we pull those away, our percentage spent would be about 60%. Almost $31 million in unexpended balance. So really that's where the majority, the lion's share of that offage comes from. If we pull that back and we look at true capital outlay expenditures, we budgeted 22.9 million. We spent 21 for about a 92% percentage spent. We were under about 1.9 million. Again, the major area of note there is in construction services at about 63%. So that's where all the ESSER funding for the South Middle School would live. I would also just mention that capital outlay is a difficult fund from year to year because unlike the general fund, which is an operational account and you can on a monthly basis have a very, very good idea of what your total expenditures are going to be. Capital outlay expenditures would go like this throughout the year because of the rate at which you're finishing projects, purchasing equipment, all those types of things. So it's really difficult to get a hard read on. But again, overall in true expenditures, we were fairly accurate in what we had budgeted. So a breakdown of what that looks like graphically. Instruction making up about 58% of capital outlay expenditures. Again, primarily because the construction side of that is now in instruction. That's atypical of what capital outlay would normally look like. 38.4% on the support service side, and then 2.8 in co-curricular. Capital outlay revenue budgeted 81.5 million, received 51.2 million for about 62.8%, under again by 30 million. Same issue that was affecting us on the expenditure side. We pull that back. We look at true capital outlay revenue. We budgeted 27.3. We received 26 million for about a 95% total collection, under about 700,000. We see the same or a similar trend here in our areas of note that we saw on the general fund side, which is the current share of property tax was about 99% of what we had budgeted, under by about 150,000. But the prior half, we fell quite a lot under at 92% or 1.1 million under. This again is very atypical. The typical breakdown of capital outlay revenue would be about 90% local. But because of the presence of the ESSER funds, we see that taking a big chunk in overall revenue this year at about 49%. So typically we would see capital outlay local revenue making up about 95 to 98% of the total revenue. So that was really our two major funds, and really explains why we saw that discrepancy in terms of overall budgeting. These are the cash positions of the major funds as we entered the end of the fiscal year. So you see the general fund had a bit of a bounce back here in terms of its cash position ending at about 19 million. Capital outlay up here in about the $67 million range. I would point out that is not true capital outlay cash. We have about $25 million in that fund that is earmarked either for South Middle School construction and finalizing that project after ESSER funds are depleted. And then about another 13 million that we're waiting for a refinance of a capital outlay certificate for that cash to be pulled out for. So true capital outlay cash would look more like 40 million, which is still a healthy cash position for that fund. And then you see special ed increased cash a bit this year, student nutrition about the same, and health insurance fund almost exactly the same cash position. Just want to highlight, this is moving now into some of the annual report data. The state collects what they call a cash balance survey with the annual report. They very much want and like to know what districts are carrying in terms of cash in their major funds from month to month. And then they take that back to the legislatures and talk quite a lot about that. There are penalties, although we don't have to be concerned. We are not carrying cash levels that invoke any penalties at this point in time. So here's really what the point of this information is, I think. And what I always like to point out to the board is, especially in the general fund, you see this really erratic level of cash where we're doing this yo-yo back and forth, with the bounce back months being November and May. And the reason for that is because the district's property tax revenues are deposited in those 2 months. So really high tax deposits those 2 months, they fall off the rest of the month. And then the only really steady stream of revenue coming in at that point is the state aid. And as you saw in that previous slide, that is not enough in terms of cash flow on a monthly basis to keep us at an even level. So it becomes very important, in one of the things we talk a lot about, the business office and I, is how we're managing these cash flow periods where we see this cash dwindle and then bounce back. You see over the course of this year, we never got below about that $6 million range, which is about 2 months worth of expenditures in the general fund, which is right where we want to be. So that went well. You see a very similar trend in special education, because the makeup in terms of revenue and expenditures are very similar to the general fund. Capital outlay, again, is a different animal altogether. You do see the big months here in November and May, because obviously a lot of tax deposits in there, but it doesn't quite have that same erratic cash nature as the other funds. I can't cancel that timer real quick. So annual report, teacher compensation data. So again, the state is collecting this teacher compensation data. If you recall, the Blue Ribbon Task Force brought forth the teacher compensation increase bill back here in 2017. That has been the base year or the measurement year since that point in terms of looking at teacher compensation and what type of progress districts are making. So you see here in fiscal year 23, total FTE fell a bit in terms of the certified staff members counted towards that compensation. Total compensation then fell slightly as well. However, average compensation increased quite a lot from year to year. So teacher compensation moved well. And then lastly, the district's long-term debt survey. I always like to include this. Again, this is information that the state is pulling. You'll see all of the district's various debt here between what are called QZAB and QSCAB bonds and capital outlay certificates. So long story short, district is carrying about $52.6 million in debt at the end of last fiscal year. What's interesting to note, and we talked about this several times, and we will continue to talk about it as we move through facility conversations, is you'll see these maturity dates here on our outstanding debt. And we really start to see towards the end of this decade that debt really falling off and being basically debt-free outside of the certificate issued to finalize South Middle by the end of that period. So that'll play heavily into our conversations in terms of facilities that are upcoming. And that was it. I think I went 10 seconds over my time, right? Nope, sorry, minute 45.
All right, board members.
Happy to answer questions or further comments.
All
Bishop
right,
Carter.
board members, you have any questions for Mr. Sassy? Okay, Ms. Swigert, do you have something that pertains to Mr. Sassy's report?
Yes, I do.
Okay, the chair recognizes Superintendent Swigert.
Mr. Sassy, someone messaged me during your presentation with the question, since when did capital outlay pay for instruction? And it's that slide. And I think that the question is, it pays for curriculum material.
Yes,
So
so
can you clarify that for the audience?
absolutely. So that would be instructional materials, curriculum adoptions, any type of leases that are falling into the instruction range in terms of technology, machines, covers a broad category, but obviously does not cover personnel expenditures, operating expenditures, any of those types of instructional expenses. Yes, ma'am.
Chair recognizes Mrs. Stephenson.
Thanks. Coy, could you put the slide back up with teacher compensation?
Sure.
I'm gonna just show my ignorance here. I don't know the difference between average compensation and total compensation.
So total compensation, Christine, being the total amount of money that was paid to all certified staff members
Oh,
included
good
under
Lord.
this particular, and again, I should have pointed out, Bishop Carr is pressuring me because I was hitting my time.
Not a word.
All certified staff are not included in this measurement. So the Blue Ribbon Task Force lays out which particular certified staff members are to be included in this measurement, which are really your classroom teachers, your student facing teachers. So obviously we have 12 to 1,300 certified staff. They don't all count under this. So it's not all encompassing of what those costs are, but for measurement purposes, this is.
Okay, then can you tell me the difference, like, so our average compensation is 68, how does that compare to Sioux Falls? If you know.
I don't off the
Or
top of my head,
Douglas.
Christine,
You don't know.
not off the top of my head. A lot of that data, we talk at length about in terms of preparing for negotiations. I can tell you HR is in the process of pulling a lot of that type of information together. We also had a great conversation with Elevate recently. It's interesting that as they've evolved and morphed over the last several years, a big part of what they do is in terms of gathering data and looking at job markets and helping businesses in our community understand how they be competitive, how they attract, how they retain. And so we had a great conversation with them the other day, and they said, we're more than willing to help put a lot of that type of data together too. So we'll be pulling a lot of that together. And as those conversations progress, we'll bring that to the board. I think you bring up a great point though, because a lot of times, and I understand why this happens, and it's easy to do. I think in a lot of our conversations, we as a whole, the district, different negotiating groups, we get hyper focused on specific areas or numbers, or and I think it's really important for us at times to back away and think about averages and different things that are happening. And I'm not saying that makes all the problems go away, but I think it's a different lens of looking at things. And so we'll be bringing a lot of that information back to the board.
Okay, and then to clarify, 68,000 is that's salary plus benefits, that's
Yes.
total compensation
Yes.
package. And
Yes.
that's what the state is looking at, that's what the Blue Ribbon Task Force is looking at.
Yeah. So
Okay.
they started really primarily talking directly about salary, and then it morphed from salary into total compensation. And really what these figures are being used for is how they're measuring district's progress over time in terms of increasing teacher compensation. This year was not a measurement year, meaning that We did not have a specific target that we had to hit or stay stable. But I think it's really important that as we are looking at that information and we are preparing for negotiations, that we're continuing to try to push that to the best of our ability and the best that our resources allow us to.
And FY 2024 will be a 5% increase about.
Yeah,
Okay.
hopefully. Yeah,
Get
or
those
more.
numbers.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Chair recognizes Mr. Berkland.
Thank you. I just had a quick question about
Yes,
the
sir.
capital outlay.
Absolutely.
Is there any state funding ever for capital outlay? Are there any options?
Very rare, Mr. Berkland. Once in a while, I believe this is my 15th year in this job, and I believe we had one round of state funding, which technically was federal funding proxied by the state for a discretionary grant process of different projects. So once in a while it'll happen, but it is very rare.
Yeah,
Almost never, I would say.
perfect. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sassy, for that thorough report. And
Thank
just
you.
for the record, Mr. Sassy was not under any official. He might have been under duress, but he wasn't under any official time limit. I just want to be clear that the board president
That's right.
didn't pull him to the side, tell him he only had 15 minutes.
That's right. That's right.
And when it just, again, I'm always joking with Mr. Sassy.
Yeah.
About being brief, so I don't want anybody thinking.
No.
You
You have been absolutely more than fair. So
No,
yeah.
I didn't say that either. I didn't quite say it's talk as long as you want. But again, thank you.
I should also point out, I miss the board appreciation.
Yes.
Which doesn't mean I don't appreciate y'all. I appreciate you very much. I love working with y'all, but I had to get people to places and get back here. So
No
thank you.
problem. Thank you so very much. All right, at this time, we're on item 12, items for board information. And do we have any committee reports? Hey, Chair recognizes Mrs. Clapham.
Really brief, I promise, just the community outreach group got to meet once and we are planning for a listening session. So that is in the works and restarting. So we'll have more information on that. Policy committee now has, thanks to wonderful Ms. Shirley, has meetings on the schedule for the rest of the year. So the policy committee will get up and going, and yeah, that's all I got.
All right, thank you. Chair recognizes Mrs. Thomas.
The finance committee met yesterday. I wasn't able to go, but I'm pretty sure you went over pretty much what you just went over. So also the facilities committee is up and running and going very strong and very well organized. I really appreciate Kathy, Jay, John, you for organizing the walk-ins and going down and sitting with principals. That's been very interesting, going over past year wish list, what is still on the table, what can be let go, and comparing the way that your group is looking back at the MGT study, but condensing it into while looking at finances, having you on there. I really enjoy being on that. Instructional council, I know that Christine and I are supposed to be on that, so I'm not sure. Was there a separate meeting? We didn't get an invite. Did you get an invite? We don't have an invite for that, so we missed that.
I will
But thank you
talk to
for-
the TLI.
Thank you. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Thomas. Before Mr. Swan, Bobby, is our committee, we just updated our committee report, so it's probably the different departments that the board members are on may not have the updated information on who's the committee, but Shirley just gave us a current committee sheet. Is this on our website? Okay, make sure you ask Superintendent Swaggart if you are able to do that, and she'll let you know whether you can or not. All right, thank you so very much. All right.
One second. I
Yes,
did have a question about the outreach. How is that going to be looked at? What have you planned for the listening sessions? What does that look like?
Here's the process. And again, to clarify, myself, Mrs. Clapham and Mrs. Stephenson are on the regular committee, are on the committee, but it works like any other committee. So we don't do anything outside of board approval. So we will plan events, bring those events to the board for approval or discussion. And those events will be for the whole board, not just for the three of us on the committee.
So the listening sessions you're talking about would be for the whole board to go to
Sure, yes,
listen?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
all right, thank
Yeah,
you.
Yeah, it works just like any other committee that we meet, we bring it to the board, and then we proceed from there. So thank you for that question. All right, at this time, the chair recognizes Mr. Swan.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. My apologies right off the bat to the facilities committee. Just this last week or these last couple of weeks, my shop kind of blew up, so I'm just really pretty busy at work. So I would like to have a report on the Title VI Parent Advisory Committee. One thing that they would like to, I would like to see addressed further in further is this, the communication would be addressed. And I believe that they're getting help to Mr. Taken Alive for that. And that was one of the things that they couldn't get out a notice for that meeting. So that was one of the things. The Parent Advisory Committee did look to be pretty active. They were looking to get busy for the Native American Day Parade. A lot of that stuff was just a lot of short notice and a lot of things that they couldn't address right away. They did meet the new director, Mr. Ira Taken Alive, as we did. He was very well received. He's a very nice man. So I'm really very hopeful for this year for great things to happen there. I would like to extend a very heartfelt thank you to all the district staff that attended. That was a great get together for everyone, I think. And that was for the parents, for the Native parents to see that many district staff involved in coming to the meeting, as well as President Carr. And I know Ms. Stephenson was busy. So I think that was but I think it was a great showing from support to our Native American parents. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who attended that meeting, and we did eat very well. So next time, please mark it off your calendars. Thank you.
All right, any other committee reports? Yes, ma'am.
In looking at the list, I see Michael, Christine, and Walt on instructional council. Is that incorrect?
I don't think that's in it, whatever I
Okay.
gave to you.
Pete, did you think you was on it?
Instructional council.
And I don't. Email Michael on the one we got today.
I didn't change anything except took the empty ones out that or the ones that are not functioning out. The committees. So is that an error that I need to correct?
I'll have to look at, we haven't made any changes from the original
Okay.
schedule that I gave you, so.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I kept that. So that's why, would you please check and get back with me?
Yes. Okay, all right, well, we'll, oh, that's why. Okay, I'll look into that, but.
Thank you.
All right.
And then Bobby can post it after it's corrected.
Okay. Well, because now I'm gonna be, were you all originally on the instructional, you all? You were, Mr. Swan, were you, and Mr. Berkeley, you were?
I was, and I was last year as well.
Okay, all right, I'll look at it.
And I
can't
did get
remember.
the invite.
Oh, you did get the
I did,
invite.
yeah.
Christine did not. And obviously,
I
if
can
you're not
confirm I
on
got
here,
the
then
invite.
Kate, you wouldn't.
Joey and Cody is who I got mine from.
Okay,
Somebody-
all right, we'll take a look at that. Yes, ma'am. All right. Okay. So everybody did get an invite. All right, we'll take a look at it. All right, we're now at other. Any board member with the other? Chair recognizes Mrs. Clapham.
I promise I will be extremely efficient. I just wanted to give a few shout outs. I got to visit with our workforce development program and a lot of people don't even know we have students at Lincoln and it was really fun. They were excited to get out to the workplace and a lot of people don't know that the district goes from preschool age to the age of 21. So we don't just have, 5 to 18-year-olds. So it's a really great program and it was really nice to be able to be out there and see that. Also, thank you to East Middle School for inviting Mr. Berklin and I. It was really cool to be part of their student council elections and they got my mostly good side on the news. So that was nice, but really good to see students and kids excited about, being good citizens and learning how this whole process works. And also just wanted to shout out on the consent agenda, we had the new cadet program. And so the school district working with the fire department to get students into learning and being trained to be firefighters. And I think so many times I hear from the community, like, where's our CTE programs, our different programs, and the district is really working to make different opportunities for kids. And this is another great opportunity to work with our community and for those students to explore some different opportunities. So kudos to administration for taking care of that.
Thank you very much. Chair recognizes Mr. Berklin.
Thank you. I was also going to thank Andy over at East Middle School for inviting us. And if any of you have not seen the news programs that they put on out there, it is professional level quality. It was insane what he sent me. I was expecting what I did in high school, which was in front of a background and just chatting, but they got green screens and all sorts of cool stuff. So check that out sometime if you can. I'm sure he'd be happy to share. And then I also wanted to shout out Jen Roberts, and I'm sure she got help from Bobby and Shirley and Sheila for putting together that board appreciation event right before this. That was really, really great to walk in and see all of the thank yous and cards from kids and all of those things. So thank you to everyone who helped put that together. I really appreciated it. Thank you.
Anybody else from the board? All right, I'd just like to let the board know that Shirley gave you a package, and thank you, Shirley, for the hard work that we've got binders now and the hard work that you are doing to keep us together. The first sheet, the 24 ASB/SD Delegate Assembly, those of you that are new to the board, last year, it made the process of the board deciding on the directions that we were going to take more conducive. And so Shirley can either print you out. No, we got a hard copy. Yep, we got a hard copy. So you read through that, you fill this out, you turn it to Shirley. All those items that all 7 of us agree on, we won't talk about. All those items that we disagree about, we don't talk about those. So we will whittle down the items that we have disagreement on, and we'll talk about those to present to the delegate assembly in November. Okay, I too just want to mention and encourage the community to come out to the 100th year celebration. Sarah Gross and her committee and all those that were involved in that did a lot of work to give us the historical perspective of the district. And so just again, inviting everybody to come. And I too would like to thank those of you that were involved in the board appreciation. Thank you very much for all the hard work. I only made one suggestion. I wanted the marching band down there and having them play something for us and just make a lot of noise in the whole building. But thank you so much for that. All right, seeing others, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session SDCL 1-25-2.1, which will be discussing employee matters, and SDCL 1-25-2.3 will be consulting with legal counsel.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay, and the board will not be making any votes or decisions during the executive session. Thank you, everyone. Let's